Hello, friends, and welcome back to the show. And on today's episode of the Audience Podcast, we were going to talk about what is the difference between a bribe-trained dog and a treat-trained dog, or a reward-trained dog. And there is very subtle differences, but I think it's something that people miss the mark on, especially when it comes to training the dogs with positive reinforcement. And yeah, so what is the difference? Like, people will not really understand and they'll think it's probably the same thing, but I can guarantee you that it's not, in the way that the dog responds or what it perceives that is going to happen. So a bribe-trained dog is a dog that will only do something in response for the fact that it knows it's going to get a treat. It knows, it can see it, it's there. You holding a piece of chicken in your hand and showing it to the dog and then going, sit, 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 sit. That, and then it does it, that is a bribe. Because you're showing it the treat, it knows it's going to get it. Whereas a reward-trained dog is you standing there and going, sit. The dog sits. And then, from out of nowhere, just by magic, you give it a piece of chicken. And it doesn't see it. The dog has sat because you've asked it to sit. Now, the dog will, obviously, from past experience, probably expect a reward, okay? But it doesn't know it's going to get it because it can't see it, but it's probably going to expect a reward. So when it's sat, you will give it its chicken and off you pop. That is a reward trained sit. That is you asking for a sit, dog offering the behavior that you want, getting a reward for doing said behavior. Whereas a bribe is, again, you showing the dog what you've got in your hand, whether it's a ball, a toy, a frisbee, a stick, or a piece of chicken, and then asking it for a sit, and it will do it because it knows it's going to get something. If you take that treat away and it doesn't see it, and then you ask for a sit and the dog doesn't sit, that's because the condition has changed. It doesn't know that it's going to get a treat because it's like, well, hang on a minute, where's my chicken? I sat before, I could see chicken, now there's no chicken, where's my chicken? I ain't sitting. And that is basically what a bribe is. And it's so subtle, but it does mean quite a bit. Do you know what I mean? It means a little bit of something because the condition has changed. If I have the frisbee in my jacket, or like the Kong sticks that we've got, or anything like that, I usually keep them hidden. If the Labrador comes running up to him and there's somebody in the distance, somebody coming past, and I want the dog to sit, basically, I will have stuff in my pocket, and I will stand there and I will just look at the dog, give eye contact, and I will say, Odin, sit, and he will sit because I have asked him for a sit. Now, he's not going to know if I'm going to give him a treat. Sometimes, like, we will vary it. We will vary the reward from time to time. Like, when he's there, he'll look at me. The guy passes with his dog, and then I'll say, right, go on, get on, and I'll let him go. His actual reward at this point isn't a piece of chicken, it isn't a ball, it isn't a stick, it isn't anything at all. His reward at this point is the fact that he's released to go and do whatever he bloody wants. To go and sniff anything, run, chase, do all his stuff, go for a swim, whatever. His reward is a life reward, and this is something that people don't talk about in dog training, life reward. My dogs are often motivated by the fact that they can go off and do something, and motivated for them is the freedom that they have. And to gain that freedom, they must sit politely if people pass. That is what we've come to. That is a reward, and that is a positive reward. So sometimes, like I say, if there's somebody coming down with a pack of dogs, Odi, Zebby, come. They will come over. Odi, Zebby, sit. They will sit. And then when the guys have gone, I will say, good. And good for us means you're actually going to get a reward or a treat or something like that. And then I will offer them both a piece of chicken and say, right, get on, off you go. And that is their release cue to then do whatever they want. The alternative scenario to this is that this is a bribe. Like, that you are bribe training the dog. You will call them over, but they'll look at you and they'll be like, you normally show me chicken, but you haven't showed me any chicken, so I ain't going to come because there's no chicken. So the bribe would be you holding a piece of chicken in the air, letting your dog see it, then recalling them so that they've come towards you, and then they will sit because you are showing them the chicken. This means for the dog to do absolutely anything that you want this dog to do, you must always show it its reward first. You must show it its treat. What happens if you don't have any? Nothing. There's a good chance that you're potentially screwed. If you do not have it and you do not show it, then the condition has changed to the dog. It will come to learn, because part of the training and part of the cue and the way that they associate certain things, because dogs do work very well on patterns and recognition. If one part of the pattern or the recognition has changed, the cue may have changed to the dog. It may not understand exactly what it is you're asking for, which is why when people talk to me about dog training and stuff like this, and they're stood there showing it the chicken, I'm like, no. So you can't show it what it wants, because it will only ever do it if you show it what it wants. Hide the stuff that you have in offer and reward for it. When it's offered you the behaviour, you must then show it. Now, you can get away with this a little bit when it's a puppy, because sometimes it might need, because as a puppy it's not always super focused. So you could do this in stages. For example, you would show it the little bit of chicken or a little bit of hot dog, sausage or ham or whatever you've got to offer the dog, so it knows that you've got it, and then you've got its attention because it wants the ham. You could then ask it for a sit or a down or a stay or anything like that, and then when it's done it, you can say good and give it its treat. And then next time when you do it, when you've asked for it, don't actually show it the food at this time, because it's still young enough that you can sort of mould its behaviours at this point. Do you know what I mean? It's young enough that you can get away with a little bit of variety in your training. It's when it's done so many times and it becomes a condition response over time when they've got a little bit older to a year. So as they're a puppy, you can actually show them the thing that you want while this is still a bribe. It's just letting the dog know that you've got something for it and you need its attention. And then eventually you can start phasing out the fact that you're showing the treat and keep it away and hidden. And then go to more of a reward-based thing instead of a bribe-based thing. I know it's very minor and you might not think it's not doing anything, but it's just a little pet peeve to go along with, like, when people ask for the cues multiple times. The cue will then become a multiple times. Do you know how many people that I come across when they ask for a sit, the dog doesn't offer it the first time or whatever, and they just stand there going, sit, 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 or doing like hand gestures or something to get the dog to do a sit or anything like that. Your problem is that now at this point, the condition and the cue for sit has actually become, if you just say sit once, it was like, well, last time when I sat and I got a treat, you went sit, 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 sit. So then you fall into the trap of going sit, 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 sit. The cue for sit has now become sit, 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 sit. Do you see what I'm getting at? Only ask for the thing once. Because if the dog understands what it is you're asking for, a recall, a cue, a sit, a stay, anything like that, the dog will, if it understands it, then you should only ever need to ask once. You should only ever need to ask once. Like, you can't be outside in the malls or any open space like that through a park, and then your dog's over there and you start going, sit, 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 sit. Imagine being on a beat with a gun dog and you're walking past and there's somebody just shouting, sit, 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 sit. No, it is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine that I think dogs should only be ever asked once for any sort of cue. Unless they are super distracted and they're being a little bit ignorant and they know you've done it. Like, there are very, very rare occasions where we needed them to sit, but there's like a group of dogs and they're all being a bit boisterous and my dogs are a little bit laser focused. So again, I'll have to stand in front for them. I'll usually go, hey, and then they look at me and I'll go, sit. And then they will both sit. And then once they've passed, they will get the reward or they'll get released or anything like that. So I don't think that a dog should be rewarded absolutely every single time with a toy or a biscuit or ham or chicken or anything like that. I think it should be very intermittent, just to say thank you, for doing what you're doing kind of thing. But I think a reward should actually be to the dog that they are allowed to get released and get on and do whatever they were doing. Might be a bit controversial. A lot of people don't agree with that. The dogs say that. A lot of people say, oh, well, the dog should be paid every single time, so we understand it's done something good, which is fair enough. But I believe that dogs and people should have an understanding between each other and this level of communication, that they understand that just general manners cost nothing. And I know people say, well, a dog doesn't understand what general manners are, but and then in the same breath, they'll also say, well, dogs are intelligent enough to do this. And I'm kind of like, why can they do not one but not the other? Do you know what I mean? So I think general manners should just be a given and shouldn't be rewarded every single time. And general manners shouldn't be expected in the expectancy of a bribe. So yeah, a little bit of a rant there at the end. But yeah, that is the difference between a bribe trained dog and a reward trained dog. A bribe trained dog will only ever do what you have asked it to do if you are showing it what it's doing. And if you do not have it or it's not there, then the conditions for that cue have changed and the expectancy for that dog to do it will diminish. It will be less. Whereas a reward trained dog, a dog that has been asked to do something because that is what is expected of it, and then you offer it a reward from somewhere where it can't see, and it gets its reward and it goes on about its business. That is a difference, but it is very subtle and something that you should pick up on if you are planning on training a dog from any age, especially from a young age, though, because you want time to condition a response to certain things. So yeah, that is the difference between a bribe and a reward, something that's very, very misunderstood, I think. And I don't think a dog should ever be like, I don't think a dog should be bribed to do something. It should just be an expectancy at this point, especially when you get older dogs. You can't spend your life having to bribe it or show it a treat to get it to do anything, and you definitely shouldn't be having to ask for a sit 7 or 8 times. Same with recalls. You can't be just pipping your whistle constantly, because eventually what people don't seem to understand is that if a dog doesn't fully understand what it is that you're asking, or if it's doing something that is more motivating to it and it's not going to do what you have asked it to do, i.e. pipping on a whistle for a recall, if it doesn't exactly know what that whistle means and there's no motivation for it to come back to that whistle, eventually they will ignore it. You guys will more than likely pip your whistle again and again and again. And the thing that dogs do over time is that if they hear a noise or a sound, could be the name or a whistle or a shout or anything of that kind, if they hear something so many times that does not mean anything to them, i.e. there's no reward or anything like that, or no expectancy from that word, they will eventually learn to blank that noise out, and your whistle will become absolutely nothing, and you will have to retrain it from scratch. So yeah, so a little bit there about bribe and treat trained. Try and stay away from bribery and try and focus more on just positive reinforcement and reward-based training instead of offering the item before they've actually done the behaviour. You want them to offer a behaviour before you reward them. And a great way to do this is what we did a lot with our dogs, is capturing behaviours. It's a form of training that allows you to reinforce a positive marker, like a clicker or a word. We use good or yes, or you can use a clicker, which means the yes, good, or the click will always mean you are going to get a reward, i.e. a treat, a ball, or something to chase or throw. So capturing behaviours means when you are out with your dog and you've got your puppy, say you've got your puppy on a long line and it's wandering around and all of a sudden it starts walking back to you, you will go yes, or good, or click, give it a treat. And eventually the dog will sort of piece together going, what did I do to make that happen? And when it does it again, you will do it again. Yes, good, or click, a treat, and you will do it again. And eventually the dog will come to understand, every single time that I go back, this is a good thing. I get positive rewarded and fussed and played with, or I get a piece of chicken. This is called capturing behaviours. And capturing behaviours stays away from bribery because it requires, you don't have to show it anything. You just try to capture the natural behaviours of the dog. And this is how I taught both of my dogs to check in, is that every single time they came running back, I clicked and treated, and now it's sort of a natural thing because we've done it so many times. And there was never a bribe involved because they never knew they were getting a treat. It was the behaviour that they offered is what got them the treat in the first place, and that's basically how a reward should work. So yeah, another shortish podcast episode there, guys, or a little bit on training. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. If you have any questions, as always, as I say at the end of every episode, if you've got any questions whatsoever on how this actually works, or if you want it a little bit more detail, please drop a comment down below. If you're on the YouTube music, please leave a like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Thank you everybody for listening on Spotify. Been having quite a bit of fun making these podcast episodes so far. So yeah, it's been quite good. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. And as always, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. Take it easy. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.